The stars looked different that night. Captain Ryan Cole had been flying through space for 15 years, but something about the darkness ahead made his hands tighten on the controls. His ship, the Thunderstrike, cut through the silence like a knife through black water. "Control, this is Thunderstrike," Ryan spoke into his radio. "I'm seeing those strange lights again. They're getting stronger." The voice that came back was full of static. "Copy that, Thunderstrike. Keep your distance, but get us some answers. Earth needs to know what's out there." Ryan had always been the kind of person who ran toward danger instead of away from it. Back on Earth, his friends called him crazy. His sister called him a hero. His mother just worried. But someone had to be first when strange things happened in space. And Ryan had volunteered for this job because he believed Earth needed protectors. The lights ahead weren't like anything in the training manuals. They pulsed and swirled in patterns that almost looked like music made visible. It's beautiful, but wrong somehow. It's like finding flowers growing in a graveyard. As his ship moved closer, the lights began to take shape. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. It was a ship, but not like any human ship he'd ever seen. This vessel looked like it had been grown rather than built. Its surface was smooth and curved, covered in what looked like crystal formations that caught and reflected light in impossible ways. "Holy stars," Ryan whispered to himself. "We're not alone." The alien ship was damaged, badly damaged. Pieces of its crystal hull floated in space around it like broken dreams. Whatever had hurt this ship had been powerful and mean. Ryan could see scorch marks that looked fresh, and some kind of dark energy still crackled around the wounds in the hull. His training told him to keep his distance and call for backup. His heart told him something different. The ship wasn't just damaged, it was dying. The beautiful lights that covered its surface were fading, growing dimmer by the minute. Someone was inside that ship and they needed help. Ryan had never backed down from helping someone in trouble, and he wasn't about to start now. "Thunderstrike to control," he said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I'm going to check for survivors." "Negative, Thunderstrike. Wait for backup." "Sorry, Control. Someone's dying out here." Ryan turned off his radio before they could. Order him to stop. Some things were more important than following orders. As his ship got closer to the alien vessel, something incredible happened. The dying ship seemed to sense his approach. Soft lights began to pulse along its surface in what looked almost like a greeting, or maybe a cry for help. Ryan's scanner started going crazy. The readings didn't make any sense. Whatever this ship was made of, it wasn't metal or plastic or anything humans had ever seen before. The energy coming from it was unlike anything in Earth's databases. But the most shocking reading was the life sign detector. There was someone alive inside that ship. Someone whose heart was beating slower and slower with each passing minute. Ryan guided his ship carefully toward what looked like an airlock. The alien technology somehow recognized his intentions. The crystal formations around the docking area began to reshape themselves, creating a perfect seal with his human-built ship. It was like watching magic happen in real time. The airlock opened with a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The air that flowed in smelled of flowers and starlight. If starlight could have a smell. Ryan put on his emergency breathing mask, grabbed his medical kit, stepped into a world that changed everything he thought he knew about the universe. The inside of the ship was even more beautiful than the outside. The walls glowed with soft, warm light that seemed to come from within the crystal itself. Strange symbols flowed across surfaces like water made of light. Everything curved and flowed in ways that made Ryan feel like he was walking through a living thing rather than a machine. But the beauty couldn't hide the damage. Dark cracks ran through the glowing walls. Some areas had gone completely black, and the air felt heavy with sadness. Following the strongest life sign reading, Ryan made his way deeper into the ship. The corridors seemed to guide him, lighting up ahead of his steps and dimming behind him, as if the ship itself wanted to help him find whoever was inside. He found her in what might have been a medical bay, lying on a surface that looked like it had been carved from a single giant pearl. She was the most beautiful and terrifying thing Ryan had ever seen. She looked almost human, but not quite. Her skin was pale and seemed to glow from within, covered in patterns of light that pulsed slowly like a heartbeat made visible. Her hair was white as starlight and seemed to move on its own, floating as if she were underwater. She wore clothing that looked like it had been woven from moonbeams and shadow. But she was dying. Irene could see it in the way her light patterns were fading, growing dimmer and slower. Her breathing was shallow, and when he checked her pulse, it was weak and irregular. A voice spoke to him, seeming to come from the walls themselves. It was mechanical, but somehow gentle, speaking English with an accent he couldn't place. "Human friend," the voice said. "You have come to help the princess. This is good. She has little time." "Princess?" Ryan knelt beside the dying woman. "Who is she? What happened?" "She is Princess Zara of the Luminari people. She was poisoned by the dark energy of our enemies. The same energy that destroys our ships and dims our light. For your people, this energy is harmless. For us, it is death itself." Ryan looked at his scanner readings. Sure enough, the area was full of some kind of radiation that his equipment barely registered. Whatever this energy was, it passed through humans like they weren't even there. "Can I help her?" Ryan asked. "Have medical supplies. Your medicine cannot heal what the darkness has done. But there is a way that requires great sacrifice. Are you prepared to hear it, human friend?" Looking down at the dying princess, Ryan felt something stir in his chest that he'd never felt before. Maybe it was her courage, even unconscious and dying. She seemed strong and proud. Maybe it was the injustice of it all. Someone so beautiful shouldn't die alone in the cold darkness of space. Or maybe it was something deeper, something that connected all living things across the vast emptiness between stars. "Tell me," he said simply. The ship's voice grew sad. "The princess fled her world to save her people from a war that would have destroyed them. She refused to marry the cruel leader of another clan, even though that marriage would have brought peace. Her people called her selfish. Her family called her foolish. But she knew that some kinds of peace cost too much." Ryan understood that feeling. How many times had he been called crazy for doing what he thought was right instead of what was easy? The Dark Ones, the Voidborn, learned of her escape. They had been hunting her across the galaxy. They desire to drain her life force and use it to make themselves stronger. If they catch her, they will not only take her life, but use her power to destroy entire worlds, including yours. The words hit Ryan like a physical blow. Earth was in danger, and this dying princess might be the only thing standing between his home and something terrible. "What do I do?" he asked. "The choice is yours, human friend. You can return to your people and warn them of what is coming, or you can stay and help the princess heal. But no, this healing her will require more than medicine, will require sacrifice. And once you begin that path, there may be no returning to the life you knew." Ryan looked down at Princess Zara. In her unconscious state, she seemed so fragile, so human despite her alien nature. But he could sense the strength in her, the same kind of strength that had made her leave. Everything she knew to save her people, the same kind of strength that had brought him out here to help a stranger. "How much time does she have?" he asked. "Hours. Perhaps less. The darkness spreads through her light channels like poison through water. Soon it will reach her heart, and then nothing in this universe will be able to save her." Ryan made his choice the way he always had, with his heart instead of his head. "Then we better get started." Ryan carefully lifted Princess Zara from the pearl-like surface. She was lighter than he expected, and her skin felt warm despite the cold radiation that filled the ship. As he carried her to his own vessel, the patterns of light under her skin pulsed weakly like a phone battery that was almost dead. Back on the Thunderstrike, Ryan laid her on his medical bed and tried everything he knew. He checked her vital signs with his equipment, but the readings were all wrong. Her blood wasn't red like human blood. When he looked at it under his microscope, it seemed to sparkle and move on its own, like liquid starlight. "This isn't going to work," he muttered to himself. His medical training was useless here. How do you treat someone whose body works completely differently from anything you've ever seen? The ship's AI voice followed him through the connection between the two vessels. "Your concern for the princess touches my circuits, human friend, but you are correct. Your medicine cannot heal what darkness has done to her light. Ryan sat down beside Zara and watched her breathing grow more shallow. The light patterns on her skin were fading fast now, turning from bright gold and silver to dim gray. It was like watching the sun set for the last time. There has to be something, Ryan said. I didn't come this far just to watch her die. There is a way, the AI said quietly. But it requires understanding what we are, what she is. As if responding. To the AI's words, Princess Zara's eyes fluttered open. They were the most beautiful eyes Ryan had ever seen, like looking into deep pools of starlight. But they were also filled with pain. Who are you? She whispered, her voice like wind. Chimes in a gentle breeze. I'm Ryan, I'm here to help. She tried to sit up, but the effort was too much. Ryan gently helped her lean against the medical bed's backrest. You should not have come, she said. The darkness that hunts me will find you too now. Let me worry. About that, Ryan said. Right now, I just want to help you get better. Zara looked at him with those incredible eyes, and Ryan felt something pass between them. Not romantic love, not yet, but something deeper. Recognition, maybe. Like two souls recognizing each other across impossible distances. You do not understand. She said, I am not just sick. I am dying because my people's greatest enemies have poisoned me with the very thing that destroys our life force. It is like ... Imagine if someone poisoned you with antiblood, something that cancels out everything that keeps you alive. Ryan frowned. But the AI said this dark energy doesn't hurt humans. It does not. Your species and mine, we are made differently. The energy that kills us passes through you like you are made of glass. But that same difference means your medicine cannot heal us. The AI's voice joined the conversation. Princess, perhaps it is time to tell him about the old ways. The ways from before our peoples were separated. Zara's eyes widened. Separated? What do you mean separated? Ryan looked between them, confused. Someone want to fill me in here? Zara's light patterns flickered brighter for a moment, like a candle flame stirring in the wind. Show him, Arya. Show him the old records. The wall of Ryan's ship suddenly lit up with images that took his breath away. He saw planets and stars, but not as cold, distant lights. These stars were warm and alive, connected by streams of light that flowed between them like rivers of liquid gold. Long ago, the AI named Arya explained, there were two worlds that shared the same sun. One world was covered in great cities of crystal and light. The other was covered in green forests and blue oceans. The images showed exactly that. Two beautiful worlds dancing around each other in space, connected by bridges of pure energy. The light world was inhabited by the Luminari, Arya continued. People who could speak with light itself, who drew their life force from the stars and each other. The other world was inhabited by people who looked much like you, Ryan Cole of Earth. Ryan's mouth fell open. You mean ... humans? Not exactly humans as you are now, Zara said, her voice getting weaker. But your ancestors. Our cousins in the great family of life. The images on the wall changed, showing the two peoples working together, sharing knowledge, creating beautiful things that combined crystal technology with what looked like early human engineering. What happened? Ryan asked, though part of him already knew the answer wouldn't be good. The darkness came, Arya said simply. Beings from the space between spaces. Things that exist only to consume life and light. They attacked both worlds at once. The images turned terrible. Ryan saw great ships of shadow attacking the crystal cities, draining the light from them until they crumbled to gray dust. On the other world, forests withered, and oceans turned black as the same dark energy poisoned everything it touched. The people of the light world, the Luminari, built great ships and fled to the stars, Zara continued. But the people of the forest world, they had to stay and fight. They changed themselves, made themselves immune to the darkness, but the process cut them off from the light forever. Ryan stared at the images. You're saying humans are the descendants of people who survive by giving up their connection to all this? Yes, Zara whispered. Your ancestors sacrificed their ability to touch the light in order to survive the darkness. It made them strong in different ways, but it also made them alone in ways they could never fully understand? Suddenly, Ryan understood why he'd always felt like something was missing in his life. Why he'd always been drawn to the stars, always felt like he was searching for something he couldn't name. The old records speak of a prophecy, Arya said. That one. Day, when the darkness returned, a child of the forest world would meet a child of the light world. And together, they would find a way to heal the ancient wound between the peoples. But I'm not special, Ryan said. I'm just a pilot who happened to be in the right place. Zara reached out and touched his hand. The moment their skin met, something incredible happened. Ryan felt a warmth spread up his arm and through his chest. For just a second, he could see the light patterns that covered Zara's skin. Not just see them, but understand them. They were telling a story. The story of her life, her hopes, her fears. The story of a princess who had given up everything she'd ever known to save her people from a war that would have destroyed them. A story of someone who'd rather die alone in space than watch her world burn. You are special, Ryan of Earth, Zara said. You have the heart of both worlds. The courage of the forest people and the compassion of the light people. That is why you came to help a stranger. That is why the darkness cannot touch you, but the light recognizes you as family. Ryan felt tears in his eyes. What does this mean? How does this help you? There is a way, Arya said, but it requires the greatest sacrifice one person can make for another. Tell me. The life force transfer, Zara said weakly. A ritual. From the old days, when our peoples were still connected. One person can give their life energy to heal another, but what? But it has never been tried between a human and a luminary. It could save me, or it could kill us both. If it works, the person who gives their life force dies, Ryan finished. Yes. Ryan looked at Princess Zara, dying in his medical bay. He thought about Earth, unprotected and unaware of the darkness coming for it. He thought about the Luminari people, scattered across the galaxy and hunted by. Things that wanted to drain the life from the universe itself. Then he thought about what his sister had always said about him. That he was the kind of person who'd jump into a burning building to save a stranger's cat. How do we do it? He asked. Zara's eyes filled with tears that glowed like liquid diamonds. You cannot. It is too much to ask. You're not asking, Ryan said firmly. I'm volunteering. Outside the ship, Ryan's sensors picked up something that made his blood run cold. Dark shapes were moving through space toward them, ships that seemed to eat the starlight around them. They have found us, Arya said, her voice heavy with sorrow. The Void-born hunters are here. Ryan looked at Princess Zara, then at the approaching darkness, then back at Zara. The choice was simple, really. It was the same choice he'd been making. His whole life, do the right thing, even if it scares you. Tell me how to save her, he said. The dark ships moved through space like hungry wolves circling wounded prey. Ryan watched them on his scanner, and his pilot instincts kicked in immediately. These weren't like any enemy vessels he'd trained to fight. They didn't reflect radar signals properly, and they seemed to bend light around them, making them hard to see even when you knew exactly where they were. How many? He asked Arya, trying to keep his voice steady. 3 hunter ships, the AI replied. Each one carries enough dark energy to drain the life from a small moon. Princess Zara struggled to sit up, her light patterns flashing with alarm. You have to leave, she told Ryan. Take your ship and run back to Earth. Warn your people about what's coming. Not happening, Ryan said, checking his weapon systems. I don't abandon people who need help. This is not your fight, Ryan of Earth. It became my fight the moment I decided to help you. Ryan had been in plenty of space battles before, but this felt different. Usually, he fought pirates or smugglers, people who were dangerous but still basically human. These Voidborn were something else entirely, something that didn't belong in the same universe as living things. The first attack came without warning. A beam of pure darkness shot from the lead ship, missing Ryan's vessel by inches. Where the beam passed, even the starlight seemed to die, leaving behind a trail of absolute nothing that hurt to look at. Okay, Ryan muttered, firing his engines, and pulling into evasive maneuvers. Now I'm officially terrified. His return fire, standard Earth's military plasma bolts, hit the Voidborn ship and passed right through it like shooting at shadows. The enemy vessel didn't even seem to notice. Your weapons cannot harm them, Zara said weakly. The Voidborn exist partially outside normal space. Only light-based attacks can touch them. Well, that's a problem, Ryan said, spinning his ship to avoid another dark energy beam. Because humans don't exactly specialize in light weapons. That's when Zara did something that changed everything. Despite her weakness, despite the poison spreading through her system, Princess Zara forced herself to stand. The light patterns on her skin blazed brighter than Ryan had seen since he'd found her. She placed her hands on the wall of his ship, and suddenly, the Thunderstrike was surrounded by a shell of pure golden light. The next, Voidborn attack hit the light barrier and scattered like water hitting a rock. For the first time, the dark ships actually seemed surprised. Incredible, Ryan breathed. You're turning my ship into a weapon. Not a weapon, Zara corrected him, sweat beading on her glowing skin. A shield. The light of the Luminari has always been a defense against the darkness. But the effort was clearly costing her everything she had left. The light barrier flickered and wavered as Zara's strength faded. Ryan could see her life patterns growing dimmer with each passing second. You're killing yourself, he said. To die fighting than to die helpless, she replied. The Voidborn ships regrouped, forming a triangle around Ryan's vessel. They began to pulse with dark energy, building up for a combined attack that would overwhelm even Zara's light barrier. They're going to hit us with everything they have, Ryan realized. Now, Ryan realized your shield won't hold against all three of them at once? No, Zara whispered. Ryan made a split-second decision that would haunt him forever. Instead of running, instead of trying to fight, he did something completely crazy. He flew his ship straight toward the largest Voidborn vessel. What are you doing? Zara gasped. Something my flight instructor said would get me court-martialed. Ryan replied, pushing his engines to maximum power. At the last possible second, Ryan spun his ship in a move that would have been impossible without Zara's light barrier protecting them from the massive gravitational forces. The Thunderstrike shot between two of the Voidborn ships. Using their own dark energy beams against each other, the collision between opposing darkness created something Ryan had never seen before, an explosion of anti-light that seemed to tear a hole in space itself. One of the Voidborn ships was caught in the blast and simply ... stopped existing. How did you know that would work? Zara asked in amazement. I didn't, Ryan admitted. I just figured that if these things are made of darkness, maybe darkness and darkness don't mix well. But their victory was short-lived. The remaining two Voidborn ships were now furious. They began to do something that made Ryan's scanner readings go completely insane. They were calling for backup. More ships are coming, Arya announced grimly. Many more. One count at least. 20 vessels approaching our position. Zara collapsed back onto the medical bed, her light patterns now barely visible. The effort of maintaining the light barrier had drained almost everything she had left. I cannot protect us from 20 ships, she whispered. I do not have the strength. Ryan looked at his dying alien princess, then at the approaching army of darkness, then at his hands on the ship's controls. His sister had always said he was too stubborn to know when he was beat. Maybe that was exactly what the universe needed. Right now, Arya, he said quietly. Tell me about this life force transfer thing. How exactly does it work? Ryan, no, Zara said weakly. I will not let you sacrifice yourself for me. With respect, princess, that's not your choice to make. Arya's voice was heavy with sorrow. The process requires both participants to be connected to Luminari medical technology. The life energy is drawn from the donor and channeled into the recipient through crystalline conduits. For it to work between species, both people must be willing participants. How long does it take? Minutes, perhaps less. But Ryan of Earth, you must understand, this is not like giving blood or donating an organ. This is giving away the very force that keeps you alive. Once the process begins, it cannot be stopped. You will die so that she might live. Ryan looked at Zara, who was watching him with tears flowing down her luminous cheeks. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this for someone you barely know?" Ryan thought about that question. Why was he willing to die for an alien princess he'd met less than a day ago? It wasn't love. Not the romantic kind, anyway. It was something deeper than that. "Back on Earth," he said slowly, "we have a saying, greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down their life for their friends. But I think it's bigger than that. I think sometimes you meet someone and you just know that they're worth saving, not because of who they are to you, but because of who they are to the universe." Zara reached out and took his hand. When their skin touched, Ryan felt that warm connection again, stronger this time. Through her light patterns, he could sense her memories, her dreams, her absolute determination to save her people, even if it cost her everything. "You are the bravest person I have ever met," she said softly. "No," Ryan replied. "The bravest person I've ever met is lying in a medical bed, willing to die alone in space rather than let her people fight a war that would destroy them." The void-born ships were getting closer. Ryan could feel their presence like a weight on his soul, a cold hunger that wanted to consume everything good and bright in the universe. "We don't have much time," he said. "If we're going to do this, it has to be now." Zara squeezed his hand tighter. "The process is irreversible. Once it begins, I know." Ryan looked into her starlight eyes one last time as just himself. "Take care of Earth for me, okay? I take care of all the worlds that still have light in them. I promise," she whispered. Ryan helped her back to her own ship, where the medical equipment waited. As they prepared for the transfer that would save her life and end his, neither of them noticed the readings on Ryan's scanner changing. The approaching void-born ships had stopped moving. Something else was coming. Something even the darkness feared. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Right now, Ryan had a promise to keep and a princess to save. "Ready?" he asked. Zara nodded, tears of liquid starlight streaming down her face. The life force transfer began. The moment Ryan placed his hands on the crystal conduits, pain shot through his entire body like lightning made of ice. It felt like every cell in his body was being slowly pulled apart and put back together again. But underneath the pain was something else, warmth spreading from his chest outward, carrying with it memories that weren't his own. He saw through Princess Zara's eyes as a child, running through crystal gardens that sang in the wind. He felt her heart break when her parents told her she had to marry someone she didn't love to save their people from war. He experienced her terror as she fled her home world, knowing she might never see her family again. But Zara was experiencing something just as incredible. Through their connection, she was seeing Earth through Ryan's memories, green forests that stretched to the horizon, blue oceans filled with life, children laughing in playgrounds, people of all different colors and backgrounds working together, fighting together, dreaming together. "Your world is so beautiful," she whispered, tears still flowing down her face, "so full of life and hope." "So is yours," Ryan replied, though speaking was getting harder as his life force flowed into her through the crystal channels. "I can see it through your memories. The luminary cities, the way your people can talk to each other through light. It's amazing." As the transfer continued, something unexpected began to happen. Instead of Ryan simply dying to save Zara, their life forces began to merge and change. The crystal technology, designed for luminary biology, was trying to adapt to human life energy. The result was something that had never existed before. "This is not supposed to happen," Arya said, her voice filled with wonder. "The readings I am getting, you are not just transferring life force, you are creating something new." Ryan could feel it too. His consciousness was expanding, touching parts of the universe he'd never known existed. He could sense the light of distant stars not as cold points of nuclear fire, but as living things with their own songs and stories. At the same time, Zara was experiencing human emotions in ways her people had forgotten. The fierce loyalty that made Ryan risk everything for a stranger. The stubborn hope that refused to give up even when everything seemed lost. "We are becoming something between human and luminary," Zara said in amazement. "Something that has not existed since our peoples were separated." Through their shared consciousness, they began to understand things that neither species had known alone. The darkness that hunted the luminary wasn't just trying to feed on their life force. It was trying to prevent exactly this, the reunion of the two branches of the ancient family tree. The Voidborn Ryan gasped, his body glowing now with the same light patterns that covered Zara's skin. They're not just random destroyers. They're trying to keep our peoples apart. Yes, Zara replied, her own consciousness now touched with the determination and courage that made humans so hard to defeat, because together we are what they fear most. Light that cannot be consumed, hope that cannot be destroyed. The crystal chamber around them began to pulse with energy that was neither fully human nor fully luminary. The light was warmer than luminary radiance, but brighter than any human technology. It was the light of two peoples becoming one again, after thousands of years of separation. But their transformation was attracting attention from something much worse than the Voidborn ships outside, deep in the space between spaces, ancient things that had slept since the first separation of the peoples began to wake up. These were not just Voidborn hunters. These were the original darkness, the entities that had driven the Luminari from their home and forced humanity to cut themselves off from the light. Something comes, Arya announced, her voice tight with fear, something I have no name for. The space around us is ... changing. Through their shared senses, Ryan and Zara felt it too. Reality itself was bending, twisting, making room for things that didn't belong in the normal universe. The starlight outside was starting to flicker and dim. Not because it was being consumed, but because it was becoming afraid. We have to finish this, Ryan said, though every word was an effort now. The transformation was almost complete, but it was taking everything they had. Together, Zara agreed. They reached deeper into the connection between them, pulling not just on their own life forces, but on the shared memory of their peoples. Every human who had ever looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. Every luminari who had dreamed of returning home to the warm worlds of their ancestors. The crystal chamber exploded with light. When the brightness faded, Ryan and Zara were no longer quite the same people who had entered the medical bay. Ryan's skin now carried faint patterns of light that pulsed with his heartbeat. Zara's eyes held the fierce determination that had carried humans across dangerous oceans and into the depths of space. But more importantly, they were connected in a way that transcended physical touch, could sense each other's thoughts and emotions as clearly as their own. When Ryan moved, Zara instinctively knew what he was going to do. When Zara reached for the ship's controls, Ryan's hands moved to help her before she even asked. "We are no longer dying," Zara said in wonder, looking at her hands, where the dark poison had been completely burned away by their shared light. "We're no longer alone," Ryan added, feeling the connection between them like a warm current, and his chest through the viewports, they could see that the Voidborn ships had stopped their approach. The creatures of darkness were backing away from the new light that surrounded the Thunderstrike and Zara's vessel. But the ancient things emerging from the space between spaces were not so easily deterred. "They are coming," Arya said quietly. "The first darkness. The things that began this war between light and shadow so long ago." Ryan and Zara looked at each other, and in that moment they both understood what they had become. They were no longer just a human pilot and a luminari princess. They were the bridge between their peoples, the living proof that the separation could be healed. "Can we fight them?" Ryan asked. "We can try," Zara replied, "but not as we are now. The transformation has made us stronger, but the first darkness destroyed entire civilizations before our peoples even learned to use fire. That's when they discovered the most incredible part of their transformation. Through their connection, they could reach out and touch the consciousness of others. It's not just each other, but anyone who carried the light of hope in their hearts. Across the galaxy, other luminari felt their call. On Earth, humans looked up at the stars and felt a sudden warmth in their chests, a sense that they were part of something bigger and more wonderful than they had ever imagined. "We are not alone," Ryan said, his voice filled with awe as he felt thousands, then millions of minds touching theirs across impossible distances. "We were never alone," Zara replied, tears of joy streaming down her glowing face. The light that surrounded their ships began to spread outward, carrying with it a message that both species felt in their hearts, the children of the forest world. and the children of the light world were together again. The long separation was ending, and in the darkness between spaces, ancient things that had fed on isolation and despair began to realize that their time was coming to an end. The real battle was about to begin. The first darkness emerged from the space between spaces like a wound in reality itself. It wasn't a ship or a creature in any way Ryan could understand. It was more like a living shadow the size of a planet. Something that existed only to erase everything good and bright from the universe. "That thing," Ryan whispered, staring at the impossible sight through their ship's viewports. "That's what drove your people from their home?" "Yes," Zara replied, her hand finding his. "And it's what forced your ancestors to cut themselves off." From the light to survive, ancient entity moved without traveling, simply appearing closer each moment like a nightmare that refuses to end when you wake up. Where it passed, even the vacuum of space seemed to become more empty. Eyes, if it were eating the very possibility of existence. But Ryan and Zara were no longer the same people who had started this journey. Through their transformation, they could feel something the first darkness had never encountered before. The combined will of two entire species refusing to give up. On Earth, people suddenly stopped what they were doing and looked up at the stars. They didn't know why, but they felt an urgent need to hope, to believe, to stand together against something they couldn't see or understand. Children drew pictures of stars and light. Artists painted scenes of crystal cities floating among the clouds. Scientists found themselves working together on projects they'd been competing over just hours before. Across the galaxy, the scattered luminari felt the same call. On colony ships drifting between the stars, on hidden bases in asteroid fields, on the few remaining free worlds. They all turned toward the same distant point in space where two young people were about to make the greatest sacrifice in the history of both their species. "Can you feel them?" Zara asked, tears of wonder flowing down her face. "All of our people, human and luminari, joining their light to ours?" Ryan nodded, overwhelmed by the sensation of millions of hearts beating in harmony with his own. Like being part of the biggest family in the universe. The first darkness seemed to sense what was happening. Its approach slowed, and Ryan could feel something like confusion radiating from it. This ancient enemy had always fed on isolation, on the despair that came from beings thinking they were alone against impossible odds. But Ryan and Zara were not alone. They carried the hopes and dreams of two entire species within their shared consciousness. It doesn't understand, Ryan realized. It's been winning for thousands of years by keeping our peoples apart. It doesn't know how to fight unity. Then let's show it what unity looks like, Zara said. Together they reached out. Through their connection and touched the minds of every human and luminary they could find, not to control or command, but simply to share what they had learned, that love is stronger than fear, that hope can survive any darkness, that no one has to face the impossible alone. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Light began to appear across the galaxy as humans and luminari worked together for the first time in millennia. On Earth, people stood on rooftops and hillsides, holding candles and flashlights up to the stars. In space, luminary ships began to glow brighter than they had in generations. Their crystal hulls channeling the combined life force of their crews, but the most incredible thing happened right where Ryan and Zara waited for the final confrontation. Other ships began to appear around them, human vessels from Earth's defense fleet and luminary ships that had been hiding in the outer system. They came not because anyone had called for help, but because they could feel through the connection that this was where the future of both species would be decided. "Thunderstrike, this is Admiral Chen from Earth Defense," came a voice over Ryan's radio. "We're here to help." "Princess Zara," came another voice. This one speaking the musical language of the luminari. "Your people stand with you." The first darkness paused in its approach, as if seeing the gathered fleet for the first time. Ryan could sense its ancient mind trying to process something it had never encountered, enemies working together instead of destroying each other. For the first time in millions of years, the first darkness is actually afraid. "Good," Ryan replied. "It should be. What happened next was not a battle in any traditional sense. There were no weapons fired, no ships destroyed. Instead, Ryan and Zara did something that had never been tried before in the history of the galaxy. They opened their hearts completely. Through their connection to both species, they shared everything they had learned and felt. Every human in the fleet suddenly understood what it was like to speak with light, to feel the songs of distant stars, to be part of a people who had wandered the galaxy for thousands of years looking for home. Every luminary felt the fierce protectiveness humans had for their families, the stubborn refusal to give up even when everything seemed hopeless, the way humans could find joy and laughter even in the darkest times. The light that resulted from this sharing was unlike anything the universe had ever seen. It wasn't the cold light of stars or the warm light of the luminary. It was the light of understanding, of forgiveness. Two peoples becoming one family again after far too long apart. The first darkness tried to consume this new light, but something impossible happened. Instead of being drained or destroyed, the light grew stronger when the darkness touched it. Every attempt to feed on the unity between the species only made that unity brighter and more powerful. For the first time in its ancient existence, the first darkness began to shrink. "It's working," Ryan gasped, feeling the entity's power diminishing. "The connection between our peoples is actually destroying it." "Not destroying," Zara corrected gently. "Healing. Can you feel it? Underneath all that darkness, there's something that was hurt long ago. Something that's been alone for so long it forgot what it was like to be connected to anything." She was right. As the first darkness continued to shrink, Ryan could sense something at its core, a terrible loneliness that had lasted for eons, a pain so deep it had turned into hatred for everything that reminded it of what it had lost. It wasn't always darkness, Ryan realized. It was like us once. Something that got separated from its people and forgot how to find its way home. Together, Ryan and Zara made a choice that would be remembered long after their names were forgotten. Instead of using their combined light to destroy the first darkness, they reached out to it with the same compassion they had shown each other. The ancient entity fought against their touch at first, lashing out with the fury of something that had been alone too long to remember how to trust. But the light of unity that surrounded Ryan and Zara was patient and persistent. It didn't demand surrender or submission. It simply offered what the first darkness had been missing for millions of years: connection. The moment the ancient entity accepted their offer, everything changed. The darkness that had haunted the galaxy for so long began to transform, becoming something new. Not light exactly, but not darkness either. Something that could exist peacefully alongside both. "And what is it now?" Ryan asked, watching in wonder as the transformed entity began to fade from normal space. "A guardian," Zara replied. "Something to watch over the spaces between the stars, and make sure that no people ever become separated the way ours were." As the crisis ended and the various fleets began to disperse, Ryan and Zara found themselves facing a choice of their own. Their transformation had made them something beyond normal human or luminary biology. They could feel themselves slowly becoming beings of pure light and life force, destined to exist as bridges between dimensions. They had perhaps hours left as individual people before they became something larger than themselves. "Any regrets?" Ryan asked, watching Earth grow visible in the distance as their ships headed home. "Only one," Zara replied. "I wish we had more time to see what our peoples will build together." "Maybe we will," Ryan said. "Just not in the way we expected." Their final transformation began as they entered Earth's solar system, with representatives from both species watching in wonder. Ryan and Zara became living components of a new kind of defense network, one powered not by weapons or fear, but by the connections between all living things. They existed now as guardians of hope, watching over both Earth and the scattered luminary colonies, ensuring that the unity they had died to create would never be broken again. Years later, human children would learn about the pilot who chose love over duty, while young luminari would hear stories of the princess who found her way home by helping someone else find theirs. But the most important legacy of Ryan and Zara wasn't the stories told about them, It was the fact that no human or luminary would ever have to face the darkness alone again.